welcome to the Healing Train, where ordinary people come to tell their extraordinary trauma journeys. I am your coach, B.Von Squires, and today we are sponsored by Spirit Source Connection, where we believe that we're multidimensional spiritual beings, that we have a mind, body, and soul that must all be addressed in order to achieve authenticity and homeostasis. Well, today we're here because it is the healing train, and we have a wonderful guest here for you. Her name is Miss Glenda Kroll. Miss Glenda Kroll, can you please come and say hello to everyone?
Good morning, afternoon, or evening at whatever time of day you're hearing us and seeing us today. Thank you so much, B.Von, for inviting me onto your healing train. I can't wait to discuss my journey with you. So let's go for it.
Thank you so much, Glenda, for being here. You know, there's a saying that says, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Well,
Yeah.
I tell you, I can't wait to hear Glenda's story because she is such a dynamo. She's such a strong businesswoman, such a strong entrepreneur, just such a strong person. So I know that there's been some pain along the way. So she's going to share that with us today. So, how this works is I wrote a book. It's called the Energy Harvest. It's a four-phase trauma healing process. So we're going to start by identifying the trauma, and then Glenda's going to tell us exactly what mindset she had to adapt to heal from the trauma. And then as she was able to heal from the trauma, what things was Glenda able to achieve? And then she'll wrap it up by telling us all of the ways that she sustains all that beautiful, wonderful momentum and how she keeps a smile on her face in the midst of all the ups and downs and twists and turns along the way. So, with no further ado, we're going to just jump right on this train and keep it rolling. Glenda, hi again. Thank you so much for being here. Can you please help us understand how you were able to identify trauma? Because not everyone is able to, because trauma sometimes becomes normalized. And so people don't even realize they're being traumatized or that they're even being abused. Psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse. There's just so many ways that we can be traumatized. And so I know there might be one or two. I'm not sure, but I'm sure you're going to let us in on it. So please take us on your journey.
Oh my, this is a huge, packful conversation because I've gone through so many different times of trauma in my life, even from the moment of being born, because I was the youngest of four kids, and my being the youngest of four kids with two siblings with special needs, the trauma started because I didn't get the attention that a child should be getting. So, trauma starts on so many different levels and in so many different areas. And that took me many years to trying to figure those things out. But let's talk about something that was a little bit more recent in my life and how I was able to get through a relationship that I found that my partner was very deceitful and who was cheating on me. And I had spent 14 years with this man, and I had never mind did I give him my heart and soul because I was also his partner in business. So I'm a worker. I'm one of those little worker bees, and I give my whole heart and soul to the people that I love. And I always felt, here's, my first little nugget is, you know, start to be aware. And I use this word a lot in when I do my coaching because we need to be aware of our feelings. And, I had this thing inside of me that kept telling me something was wrong. But my life has always been very busy because, as I mentioned earlier, I have two siblings with special needs. And at a very early age, I became the caregiver to my siblings. So sometimes in my life, I didn't have time for my own feelings, my own self, because it was pulled over to look after others.
Sure.
And so, when I had this voice in me telling me something was wrong, I sort of put it off to the side. And it just didn't feel right. Something was wrong. And I kept putting it off until one day when a message came through louder than ever because an email came into our business. And at the time we were struggling in our business because, well, through 9/11, it affected our business very hardly. And then other things had started to be happening. And, they were happening when I sit back now, they were actually happening for a great reason. But at that point, you don't really realize what's happening around you, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't until that one day that an email came in and I asked, it was from somebody that I hadn't known, it was a woman. And when I started asking the question of, who is she? What is she all about? Like, how does it um come to our business? Like, what is it? And when the explanation left me feeling that what I was hearing back wasn't the truth. And
Mm.
that's when it was like something in me, everything it was hitting at me.
Oh.
And it was like something was saying, open your eyes, Glenda, you've got to start opening your eyes. And it was that night I went searching and everybody's asleep at home and it kept on persisting in me. And then I went searching through and found all of his email passwords and so forth. And so I went diving in because normally I would never have done something like that because I'm very respectful. But my whole life was wrapped around this gentleman who I gave my whole soul to, and even his family. And it was like, somebody's lying to me, something's wrong. And
Mm-mm.
when I discovered what I discovered, I discovered a folder in his computer which had letters of a lot of women and things that some illegal activities. And it was like, wow, what is going on here? And yes, it hit me with a ton of bricks. And I looked at it. So trauma was a huge fold over in two ways.
Sure.
First of all, this was my second relationship that I was in. My first one, when I went through, when my kids were very young, I struggled because I went through a marriage or a divorce that left me broke and raising two children as a single mom without any type of support from anybody. And on top of it, being dragged through the courts to hopefully what he was hoping to take away my power and to break me. But this came all flashing back at the same time. So the trauma was a twofold that hit me.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, because of what I had learned the first time around, and I had gone through a lot through that time, and never mind just me. And it really wasn't about me, but it was about my kids,
Sure.
because
Yes.
I'm a mom first.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. And I am, to me, my children, I'm a mama bear. I take care of my babies, right? No matter how old they are now. But when that happened, I learned a lot of very valuable lessons, and I healed from that trauma because I learned to forgive and forget. Okay, let me go back to there, not forget. I learned to forgive. As I say, I don't forget anything, but I don't hold the anger and their hurt in my heart. I learned to let go of that, but I never forget.
Mm-hmm.
And when that came around the second time around, I knew what I needed to do to move forward, because I knew at that point it wasn't that I was going to deal with it on the level of approaching him, because I saw what happened the first time around. So I spent 9 months holding all of that anxiety and that pain in me and pushing it down, because what I needed to do was set myself up and basically start setting my new life before I let him know what was in, because the moment I saw that, I knew the relationship was over.
Sure.
Like for me, respect, honor, honesty is part of my values in life. And at this point, he had already, from what I saw, he had already gone through all of that, and I wasn't going to accept that. But I knew that instead of approaching it, I needed to get all my ducks in order and set my entire life up before I was going to leave that relationship. And that's what I did. So
Exactly.
9 months, imagine knowing that this person is cheating, having an affairs and doing all of the rest, and me showing him or pretending that everything is well and happy and fine, and day in, day out doing things like I got him to realize, because business was, we were struggling at that time, that it was time to sell the house and start packing, but him thinking that we're going somewhere else. In the meantime, I actually had somewhere else. The universe really had my back, because everything
Mhm.
that I planned behind, and that's a whole full story of those 9 months, that journey that I went through. And as I always say, I was pretending I was in a movie, so I put my head in a different space. I
Mm.
um I I set myself up for the win, and everything that I set up moved exactly the way I needed to, even right to the very last moment when the house sold, and I even was able to transfer money over to my lawyer's account, and did everything, and everything went smooth and sailing. But it didn't mean that I didn't cause hurt. So when it was all over and I sat back at the end, when I was sitting back in my new home the day after I told him, and I'm sitting amongst a condo with my two kids, because at the time one of my kids was living in, another one of my kids was living in another property that we owned, and I felt his life was in jeopardy, so we all came together under one place. And I'm sitting in my condo filled with just boxes, and it's the day after of 9 months of dealing with all of this. And I'm sitting there and I'm just exhausted beyond, because I didn't allow myself to feel anything
Mm.
at that time. So, and I didn't know what to expect, because I was so focused on where I needed to go, not
Mhm.
on how I was feeling. And it
Yes.
was the next day of the exhaustion and oh my God, I made it through, but what am I going to do now? And the feeling of rejection and hurt and all of that was just beyond what I didn't expect, because I didn't think. Everything happened too fast and too soon, and I had to take control of me and my situation immediately. So when we talk about trauma, yeah, that was a huge piece of trauma that I dealt with. And I started at the very moment of that next day of going, okay, um, I need to start now. I'm at this point feeling my whole body is shaking with everything that I
Mhm.
had gone through. And it was okay, I need to now take control of me. Even though, I still had my kids who were now young adults. My son was just beginning law school, and my daughter was starting to work. It was like, you know what, I knew that they were okay. Yes, it affected them, but right now it's me.
Yes.
And, like a mom, I've always been about my kids, and I've always been about looking after others. And for the first time in my life, it was, you know, keeping an eye out there, but it was now about standing back, breathing, starting to figure out, why I didn't sort of pay attention to some of the signs ahead of time. Some of it maybe I didn't want to see.
Sure.
But also taking responsibility for myself. What did I do? Was there something that I could have done differently? What didn't I do? So we have to look at ourselves first,
Oh yes.
because we can't blame others. And my biggest thing was to understand why he did what he did. And when I started to look at, because, we are who we've been, we are who our parents set us out to be, right? So, from what we come from, we do change, and I have changed drastically from the person as a child of where I came from. But we all start there, and not everybody changes. Some people just keep going on with what they were taught as a young person, or how they were brought up. in their lives, because not everybody looks deep into themselves. And I don't know why, but even as a young child, I always looked deep into myself, and I always started looking of what's around me and questioning, and I always had things coming up in me. So I've done the work all through my life. And at this point, I knew that I had work to do because I knew how much this had affected me. So it was, and of course, at this point in time now, I have no business. I actually don't have a car anymore. I had a roof over my head, and that was, you know, starting with my gratitude too. How fortunate that I was that I had a place that I could fall into.
Yes.
And, being so grateful for that moment and saying, okay, I'm healthy. My body is strong and healthy. My mind is strong, but I'm right now injured. And I have to focus on my injury to start building my strength back up because I've been knocked down.
Wow, Glenda. That is so powerful. You know what you just said? You just told a woman out there who just found out that her husband was cheating on her
Yeah.
that she doesn't have to stay in that situation. You just told us how you were able to gather yourself in that moment. You knew it's time for action. Action.
I knew that
So,
my worth was more than that.
yes.
I'm a great woman. I'm a great mother. You know what, I reach out with love and understanding and kindness. I give my soul. So I knew who I was. And for women
Mm,
that are watching this, you have to look at yourself and stop, saying that you don't deserve. You deserve love. You deserve respect. You are worthy. And the first time around that this happened to me, I didn't know about my worth to the degree. I was involved with a very narcissistic family that knocked me down, and I didn't realize it as it was happening.
sure.
And so it took a lot at that time. But what I realized right away is, you know what? I don't
Oh,
deserve
Glenda.
this, what you're doing to me behind my back. And I had asked earlier at one point, are you having an affair? And, right away, no, of course not. Why would you even asking me these things? And even right up to the very end, now I had tons of evidence.
Yes.
And I put all this together. I became my own private detective. The things I
Yeah.
did was crazy. And part of the things that I do in my own coaching is helping women and even men that are going through these things as well, because the whole idea is to take control of your own life.
Okay.
And this is what I did. I took total control. Now, I blew my own self out of the water. Of being able to deal with what I dealt with was bizarre. I
Yeah.
remember one night leaving my girlfriend's house. I had only two friends that knew what I was going through. Everybody else had no idea, because I had to keep, this was a top secret mission. That's how, like, I lived in a different world. I became the lioness. I put all these things into me. I shifted my mindset to say, you are the lioness, you have the power. And I talk to myself in that. And when I would walk at night, I had a dog who I adored. And every night when I would walk my dog and the streets would be quiet, it was the only time I could cry.
Hmm.
And I would fall apart. And I had developed a mantra for myself: for every tear I shed, laughter shall follow. And I kept repeating this to myself as I walked and I walked. And I kept saying night after night, every tear I shed, laughter shall follow. And I will make it through this and I will conquer when I need to. And it was crazy that everything that I did, from packing boxes and labeling them and moving things when he was not around and watching where he was going and all of this stuff, like I said, the things that I did was like a James Bond movie. And maybe one day my story will become a movie, because everybody that hears it thinks about it as it is. But it's crazy how when I took control, because instead of feeling like the victim, I was going to become the victor.
Mm-hmm.
And in everything, the universe did have my back. Every single detail worked out, even to the very, very end. So,
Isn't it?
yeah,
Wow, what a hor heroine story, like, you know what
yeah,
I mean? Yes. Oh my goodness, you saved yourself, you saved your children, you got out of that situation, you found yourself, and you said, hey, you are the lioness, you will not be defeated, you can do this, you will move forward. And I love the mantra, brought tears to my eyes. For every tear I cry, happiness shall follow. Wow, that is so beautiful. Wow, Glenda, this is so powerful. Thank you so much for helping us understand this part of your trauma. Identifying it always is the first part, being aware. And like you said, sometimes we don't want to be aware. Denial sets in. We
yeah.
can't believe this is happening. How could this be happening? I must be making it up. I must be crazy. No, you're not crazy because you have that inner feeling, that inner guidance system that is unique to all of us to tell us. It's our intuition, right? It's the
Yeah.
intuition was
And
telling
we don't listen. And after that time, I've now totally, every time something
yes.
hits me, I'm very aware now. I look at people, I watch how they stand when they talk to me. I watch body languages when I meet new people. And you know what, I've even forgiven him for what had happened to at that time. I've even seen him since, and you know what, I got out of it and I conquered it, and I persevered. And the best type of revenge is success. And
Absolutely.
to show him it wasn't about him. Like, I was successful, I changed his business, I made it successful, and when I left it, his business dropped. And it wasn't about that. It was more the fact, and the actual fact is, I transferred my entire life over, and I created success in my own life now, because I touched and did so many other things, and finding who Glenda really was, this powerhouse that I didn't even know.
It's amazing how the things that happen in our lives make us who we're meant to be. It's either going to make you or it's going to break you. And you're like, no, this is going to make me who I am. Show me
But
who I am.
let's put it this way, instead of saying it's going to break you, it's going to make you break through to you. I
I
don't
love
want to
that.
look at it. I don't like to look at it. See, I'm the optimist.
Yes.
I'm the total optimist in life, and I always have. As a little girl, like, the sun was always going to shine, no matter how much water is flooding us. That's been my outlook in life.
Mm-hmm.
But so I look at it as I don't know how, and I always have this thing, because I have a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of responsibilities over my head, or all my bodies that I have to look at. And when things hit in my life, it's never one thing to deal with, it's many things that happen all at once. And I always say, I don't know how, but somehow I'm going to find a way, and I'm going to make it through. And
Yes.
so for every breakdown, or for every fall apart, it's happening for a better reason, so it will help you to break through instead of break down. And
Oh, I
that's what I
love it.
discovered. I didn't break down, or I have this kind of game with one of my dearest friends. And we would say to each other when things happen, and because when she went through a divorce earlier on, I had coached her through that whole time in her own life. And we say to each other, when something happens, that you're going to have a pity party. And I say, okay, part of the thing in life is feeling what's happening in your
Yes, you
life.
have to. Mm-hmm.
Have to be able to break down. And you have to do that because you need to feel it. You need to understand it. How else are you going to become stronger if you can't really look around of what has happened to you?
So true.
That's how
So
we gain
true.
our wisdom, right?
Yes, absolutely. That was so powerful what you said as you break through to you. Wow, that was so powerful. Mm-mm-mm. Glenda, I'm really happy about this phase that we just talked about, the whole identify phase. If you don't mind, we're going to shift a little bit and start talking about the mindset. You already said a little bit about the mindset. You had to forgive and not blame, and make sure you are awareness is what we're after here. And so, what other mindset, or how did that mindset come together for you? Of course, you put on that I am the lioness. You got your mantra together. You know, got to move forward for me and my babies. Tell us a little bit more about that mindset that you adopted, and how deep did that go?
So, some people feel like, the word mindset these days is just thrown around, like, and people have the thing of going, yeah, mindset, it's no big
I
deal.
don't understand what it
My
is.
mindset starts with me. Years ago, and I'll tell you why, and I have to go back.
Okay.
I'm a very tall woman for women's sake. I'm 5'8". I put a pair of heels on, I can be 6 feet tall. Okay. So I've grown up my entire life being the tallest. When I was in school, I was the tallest of all the kids, all through school. You'll find me in all my school pictures at the very back, in the middle, right at the top. That was me because I was the tallest. And I didn't like being the tallest. Because I felt like I was massive. And so that gave way to my posture, where I would want to walk sort of over so I wouldn't be quite as tall. Now, at some point in my life, my mother, who was a very kind of petite woman and much smaller than myself, she would always say, "Oh, look how lucky you are to be so tall." And as I would put my shoulders down, she would poke me in the back, just with the finger, to stand up, stand up, stand up. And I fought with that a lot because it didn't feel good to me, because people would call me, would say to me that she's the big girl. And I always looked at the big girl as being heavy instead of tall.
Oh,
That was just the mindset at that point, right?
sure.
And it was at a point in life where I started, actually, in one of my first jobs. I worked in retail as in ladies retail stores. That's how I started my very first job when I was going through school, because I wanted to earn extra money. And what I found is instead of feeling that way, as I started learning about how to dress and everything appropriately, because I always dressed right for my body type,
Mhm.
I started to realize the importance of my height, which caused me now to really take pride in myself. Taking pride in yourself means standing up tall, shoulders back, showing who you are.
Mhm.
So when I say about changing your mindset, it starts with coming out of showing yourself. Now, when you stand up tall, put your shoulders back, and you can walk into a room and you can have heads turned because people notice you. That starts of your self-worth.
Mhm.
So when I work with people and talk about self-worth, it always comes through I talk about how you put yourself together, how you show up for yourself, because that starts the mind, right? Like, our body is connected to our mind.
Yes.
And when we can't put ourselves together and be content with how we show up, that's going to affect our mindset, because we're not going to be worthy. We're going to start looking at ourselves, and maybe we make a decision and then we start doubting our decisions that we make. Like, so it all starts. So when I started figuring out about starting to dress the part, standing up for myself physically, which turned into psychologically, which turned into emotionally, that started shifting me.
Mhm.
And that started building me. So when my life came tumbling down at that time, it was like, I've always been, not always, but in my early 20s, where I never exercised and never did anything, I started changing my life at that point and started taking control of my health. So I was always in from that point when this happened to me, because this was when I was in my beginning of my 50s, where all of this trauma came through. And, of course, what happens is when we're wounded, it's like an animal, the wounded soul bends down and you kind of hover within yourself. It was like, no, Glenda. And I talked to myself with
Yes.
power.
Yes.
You're a strong woman. You need to stand up and you got to start walking again with that power in you. Yes, you're wounded, but that healing, that woundedness will heal. You will come back because you always do.
Wow. What a
So talking to yourself in that strong way, as I mentioned about the pity party. So my girlfriend and I, that day, it was like, I'm going to have a pity party. She said, okay, I'll give you a day. And I got, no, you know what? This is a little bit stronger than that. I'm going to need 2 days to have a pity party for myself. And,
absolutely.
and we said, okay. And I gave myself 2 days to just cry, to fall apart, to feel, to understand. I did a lot of time and I did nothing with myself. Day 3, it was time for
Yes.
me. Take a shower, put yourself together, get dressed, go out for a walk, even if you do nothing else. And now start to feel that empowered body. And
Really?
that is when things started to shift.
Wow, Glenda, that is amazing. What you just told us is that it's an inside job. This is an inside job, even down to your own speaking to yourself, that inner voice of your own speaking to you. This is a total inside job,
And
and
not the victim voice.
no, no,
Not
no,
the
the
victim
victim,
voice. Never
no,
be the victim.
right, exactly. It had to be the higher self speaking to you, the hurt one. And so I'm just happy to hear you say that, because there's people out there that don't realize that they have a voice in themselves. They don't realize that it is an inside job, and they're grabbing for things outside of themselves to fix the pain on the inside. It doesn't work. And you just showed us that. You just showed us everything. Oh, that was so perfect the way you just lined it all up. You know what I'm saying? I always say, make a date with your grief. Make a date with the things that are happening in your life that you're not completely satisfied with. Because if you don't make a date and actually be intentional about addressing those things, they're going to come out sporadically in timings that's not going to be appropriate, in ways that are going to be destructive. So, taking that time to sit with yourself, have a friend that says, okay, I'm here for you when you're done. How much time did you say you needed? Okay, that's what you got. And then there you go. It's over. The crying is over. You can't stay in that place, that sunken, dark place. No, you cry, you release, you wash it all out, you journal, you dance, you jump, you scream, you cry, you whatever you need to do. And then you move on. Woo! And my mother used to always say, oh, get up and get yourself together. Take a shower, put yourself together. You're going to feel so much better. And it always worked. It always worked.
Yeah.
There's something about that, just caring for that body, like you said, that body mind connection. Wow, that was so powerful, Glenda. Thank you so much for that. Well, guys, this is so awesome, right? We're talking to Miss Glenda Kroll. She's just absolutely fabulous. She's told us all about the trauma that she went through with her her ex-husband, and then another relationship, people that just did not value her, people that abused her. When she got wind of it, she had to jump into action as if she were a movie character, so that she could take care of everything that needed to be taken care of, only crying outside when no one could see her, and then putting back on that face as if everything was okay. But little did they know, whoo, Glenda had a plan, honey. Glenda had a plan, and it was not to stay broken. It was to break through, to who she is, and that is what she's done. And so now, as we continue to move on this choo choo healing train, we're going to move on to the achieve phase. Now, you've obviously been able to achieve so many wonderful things that you've even already spoken to us about. Are there some other achievements that you'd like to talk about today? How has your life evolved? Tell us about the things that
Gosh.
you've been able to achieve now that you let go of all that old baggage, that, all of that old trauma. You've moved into this new Glenda, this new way of thinking. What are you achieving now? What is happening? Tell us about that part.
So, I always, as I sat there when I was starting my new life, it was like, what am I going to do with myself? And I tried a couple of different businesses. So, this is also what I teach, is I sat back and I started looking at what are the accomplishments or what are the things that I've had success with in my life prior to, where are my strengths hidden? And when I sat back, and I had many strengths, and I had, I started out of my life when I went through school, I was a paralegal. And from that, it always, I didn't stay in that position because I didn't enjoy it, but it opened a lot of doors. And one of the doors were I worked at one point for for a major corporation, Shell Canada, and I was in the real estate department for 12 years there, and I handled all the properties and the rents and everything for all the gas stations in Ontario, which is
Ooh.
Ontario is this huge province in our city. But besides that came also another job that happened is I was also involved with, because I made comment to somebody when we would go to our marketing events that we would have, we would go up to some place, and we would all our entire marketing team, where there were hundreds of people, would come together, and we would have speakers and so forth. And I always commented to my boss that I wasn't impressed with how they put together things. So they said to me at that point, if you think you can do better, then you do it. And I said, oh, okay. And so I did. And you can't complain about something unless you can come in
A
and help with
solution.
it, right? It was so, so I did, and I saw, that I had a flair for putting events and doing things together. So that's when I started to go in and started to do, I figured, well, since it's a natural thing for me, and that's what I started doing. And I did a bit of it, and I was being, fairly successful in it, but I really felt that I wasn't getting my worth out of it.
Mm,
I didn't love it. People were taking advantage of it. And I felt that I was more powerful than I was getting paid for it. So I sort of put that to the side. And every so often I do little things for people, of friends that I know, that I'll help them out in events and things like that. But that didn't turn into my major thing. But then there was always something about real estate, because, I've had a lot of properties through the years of, buying houses where I lived in and things like that. But, when you're working for one of the largest corporations in the world, you learn a lot. And at that
mm-hmm.
point in time, and the one thing that I was really good at is, you put a document in front of me, I could read the entire document and I understood it. So it was like, okay, I something's telling me inside that I should be trying to do some real estate, but I don't want to become a real estate broker. So I decided that I had a little bit of money, that I was going to go and become an investor. And so I started to take some courses to learn. And then what I did is I bought my first house, and by myself. Of course, I had a mentor now, but I bought my first home. And then I took that home, which was a single family dwelling, and then I converted it into a duplex. So what I did is, I walked around and I researched, number one. I found out what type of a property that I was looking for. I was looking for basically a property that had two entrances in, so I could split the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had I have an eye for, of decor and things like that. But most importantly, I can see things in a property where I can change it, what it could be. I can see,
Mm.
what I did in many ways. So this first particular house, as soon as I walked in, I had that feeling like it was home and it felt comfy to me. So, and then most importantly, as I walked through, I could see where I could actually close off one area and I could split it to make it two areas. And the reason why this house was not selling, because it was on the market for a little while, as an investor, you look for something that you're going to get a good, lower property value for it, and it wasn't selling because it smelled of smoke, so people weren't taking it. But I learned when I was going through my thing is how you can get rid of smoke smells and stuff like that. And for me, it was like, oh, no problem. This is a no-brainer. So I went in and I bought my first property, and there was a little bit of, listen, not everything goes 100%, and there were
Sure.
some major challenges that I had through with contractors and so forth. But at the end of the day, I ended up with a fabulous legal duplex and I became a landlord and I learned about all of the rest. And then I started buying other properties and started moving them and changing them around or flipping them. And it was, like probably one of the greatest lessons in life that I can do, that I never mind that I made lots of money on it, but most importantly, I told myself earlier, how I didn't have talents and things like that. But all of
Mm.
a sudden I proved to myself, like, wow, you take something out of nothing and you have turned it into something incredible. And, my whole thing was, is all I wanted to do was make a place that was safe for a family to come in, and safe and clean. Like that's what I was always about, and to be there. So I went and I did all this. And, from time to time, I watch around, like this is not really the greatest market right now that we're dealing with.
Yes,
But
I know.
I always knew when my properties had reached their maximum, when I need to sell, what to do to incur higher values in them. So it turned into being sort of a side area for myself. And if nothing else, it's been the most incredible learning ability. And now, I out there, helping others to also, if they're looking to get involved in investing and doing something, it's sort of, something that I love to do as well on the side. So, when you can give yourself that wow moment and you're not looking at anybody else, but to yourself, it's huge. It's
Yes,
huge.
it's so huge. Something that you're saying there is that instead of comparing yourself to other people, you were able to see your strength within yourself from where you used to be. That was so powerful what you just said.
Yes, many years ago, I used to be one who was comparing myself to others. And when I did that, it knocked me really down. And then I got to a time when all of things happened and that forth, that I realized that, how special I was. And I'm
Yes.
not saying this out of being, being like, ego, but out of, I know for a fact of where I've come from and what I lived through with even my family, that um, the person that I look at in the mirror is the person I'm very proud of,
Yes, thank you.
because it's what we need to do for ourselves. But there is another factor for me, when I do things is, when I have hit bottom too many times, what really amazed me is how much my children have always watched me.
Mm.
And when I had when my life fell apart, both my kids, who I highly respect, at this point they're more adults. Like, as I said, my son was already starting his first year of law school, and my daughter was starting one of her careers. And they were looking at me like, wow, look at, she's going. She's not sitting back. She's not having, feeling sorry for herself. Like, Mom, wow, and that just even gave me more fuel. And I believe in our we, mothers, fathers, we are the leaders, if nobody else, for our children. And for me, it's always taking the higher road. So like I said, even forgiving and for what somebody has done, I teach my children about of not being the victim, of being strong within themselves, and being taking, like if someone talks bad of us, we can turn around and say, okay, that's fine. I send you
Yeah,
love and light and walk away. Like,
ab-
we don't need to be there to be challenging anybody, but we can be there and knowing who our own self-worth is and being proud of who we are, and taking the higher road to be kind, to be loving, to being considerate of another person. Because at the end of the day, you don't know what somebody else is going through.
oh, so true. So
And when we can come back with a little bit more compassion and understanding, it changes the world around us.
oh my goodness, Glenda, that was just so powerful what you're saying. You know, I as you were telling your story, I watched the transformation of your life. And I'm sure everyone else is watching the same thing because you showed us how this broken person, you know, um gave herself a chance. How you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps and said, "Wait a minute, I've got two children watching me. I
Mm,
am their mother, and what am I going to show them through my actions?" Because it's the actions that speak much, much louder than the words. And and
absolutely.
and there, and you believe it or not, children pick up on that, and it helps formulate who they are as people. And so,
Absolutely.
watching their mom become this powerhouse dynamo, I no wonder he's in law school. No wonder she had more than one career because they saw their mom be able to do so many things. And like you said, you were able to find your strengths and understand what they were, and then be able to use them in a practical way so that you could actually earn an income for yourself. That is so powerful. You are an alchemist. You make things out of nothing. You turn nothing into something. And not everyone can do that, Glenda. That is powerful and that is special. And so the fact that you are here with us today, feeling so good about yourself, and there's nothing egotistical about feeling good about the work that you've done. You, we need to feel proud of ourselves. And anybody who's
Absolutely.
telling us that we don't have that right, they can go have a seat. You keep feeling good about yourself and you keep moving forward. That's from me. Okay, now as we move on, Glenda, we're dying to know. We just have to know, how in the absolute world do you sustain all of that positive energy, that positive mindset, that's beautiful, brilliant smile in the midst of all the ups and downs and twists and turns? Because, like you said, things don't always go as planned. So, how
No.
do you stay motivated and how do you stay sustain all of that?
Well, first of all, I believe of the power of movement in our bodies. I'm a walker. Through, unfortunately, it's maybe a year and a half now, I had a very bad accident, where I got very severely hurt and I couldn't walk. And talk about knockdowns. But I gave myself a day or two to have a pity party, and like, after all, I was in pain and couldn't walk. But somehow, the doctors weren't just, by this point in time, this is a year and a half ago. Well, like, here's the thing, I'm going to say this, and most women wouldn't do it, that this is my year of my big celebratory year. I'm going to be 65 years old. And I'm so grateful that I am who I am, because there's so much that I have gone through. But at that point in life, the doctor said, well, you're now in your 60s. I don't know, you might need an operation and all the rest of it. And I looked at my doctor and I said to him, nope, I'm not going to be having any operation. And in a few months or what, I will get back on my feet and I will be walking on my own 2 feet.
Okay.
And, so I have a very positive mindset.
Hmm.
I have the abilities to, no matter what it has knocked me down, that nothing's going to keep me down.
Yes.
And that's what I did. I began with walking tiny steps with crutches to, moving to one crutch to sort of to have something. And as I went, finally got to a cane, and I looked at my daughter as the first day that we looked at this cane, and I said, this cane will be here for 2 weeks, and that's the maximum, because I'm no old lady and it ain't going to be slowing me down.
Right.
And before you knew it, I was back up and into walking and building up my stride and my things. So what keeps me going? The power of walking, the power of believing, um, to be so grateful that I've had so much. I have two beautiful, wonderful children that have always been there for me, and believed in me, even at short times when I didn't believe in myself, to seeing that the people that they've have become, to having, and it's funny when you look at it, all of my dearest and wonderful closest friends, my girlfriends, are all the same as me. We're all strong-minded, strong-willed women, because that's what I seem to attract. And we hold each other up. So when you do, like, it's really important that we keep and be aware of the people we hang out with,
Oh my goodness, yes.
people that are going to bring us up when we are down, because there's nothing in life that's going to say that you're going to be up all the time.
Mhm.
And there's times when even the strongest of people fall apart and fall down. And, when we fall apart, you're falling apart to break through, to come together again. So, don't get worried about that fall down. It's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough for you. It's, if nothing else, it will teach you. But it's really important. I've always believed in coaches and mentors. Since I started out, like when I said, I went into real estate. I looked for somebody who was doing what I wanted to achieve, and I got myself a mentor, and
Mm.
somebody who would sort of start to educate me and build me and so forth, so I could obtain what I'm looking to obtain. So coaching and mentoring is a very big part of it as well. And like I said, it's like, I don't want to have pity parties. I love the fact when I go walking around, I have a thing with myself. I have my own competition, and sometimes I go for walks and I see a lot of people walking with their heads down. And so I love to walk around and smile and have a game of how many people can I get to smile back at me, or as I walk and I say good morning or hello to people as I'm walking, to see how many people will respond back, because you never know what that little bit of a smile can change somebody else's day. And
Aw.
we don't know what's going on. And I know, of all the things that I have been through that people have never been, aware of. And, having that person behind me, that even when I was falling apart, knowing that I had that friend who I could treasure and who would be there for me, to allow me space even to fall apart, so that I could pull myself back together again.
Yes. Wow. Wow. What you're telling us is that we have to have the wherewithal to be grateful no matter what is going
No
on,
matter
no
what.
matter what has happened. Gratitude, it starts with the gratitude, right?
Well,
Yeah.
the fact that you can get up, for me, getting up in the morning and standing on my own 2 feet, I'm grateful.
Absolutely. You
I
were
can open
unable to
my
walk.
eyes. Yeah,
You
I
were
can open my eyes. Yeah, and that was the whole thing. I can open my eyes and see the sun is shining. I can go outside for a walk, even when if it's 40 below here in Toronto and it's freezing cold. I have that ability, and that is so much to be grateful for.
absolutely. Some would say those are the small things, but no, those
It
aren't the
all
small
starts
things.
with the small things.
Yeah. Those are huge. You know what I mean? Those are
Yes.
huge things that seem small.
But you like your health, you cannot take for granted. You got to be holding on to that with so much love and so much pride and so much bewilderment. Because think of it, Our heart beats without us doing anything. The fact that we breathe in oxygen and we can breathe out, we don't even have to think that alone. You know, how many people are on oxygen masks and things like that because they can't breathe on their own? So the
Absolutely.
fact that you can do these things, which are huge.
Yes, they are huge, so huge. Well, I'm telling you what, this has been so amazing. You have enlightened us. You brought tenacity. You brought authenticity. Yes, you brought all of that to the table today. You gave us a piece of you. And thank you so much for bringing that all to us today, Glenda. We're better because you shared this ride with us today. And so, guys, I want to thank you all so much for being here for another episode of the Healing Train. And before we wrap it up, I'm going to ask Glenda to give you one last nugget, Glenda. Anybody that's out there that needs something to hold on to just for this day right here, what will you tell them? How should they respond to this day right here?
Just remember, if you're going through a time where you feel things are dark or at their bleakest point, these times only last for a short term. Things change very quickly in our world. It's, you know, everything takes small steps to move forward. I am, you know, I'm a coach, and anybody wants to reach out to me at any point in time, you know, I'm here even to have a chat with you.
Please
But
tell them how.
I'm on social media as Glenda Kroll, or I am Glenda Kroll, and on Instagram I'm as known as the Wise Woman's Word, and and my email is info@Glenda Kroll. But I want you to remember that, you know, changes can happen at a brief moment, and they do. It's if you just take the action of not stopping. Don't allow yourself to just fall. If you do nothing else, go and do some breathing. Go for a 5-minute walk. Talk about baby steps. Go out and just 5 minutes. 5 minutes to walk, to breathe in, and just say to yourself, this too will change. And it will. But believe it. Just believe it.
Wow. Thank you so much for those final last words, Glenda. You guys, thank you again so much for being here. We're going to see you again next week. But in the meantime, I'm going to pray and ask God to bless you real good. And if there's something that you're manifesting for, don't give up the faith. Keep up that positive action. Keep moving forward because that thing is coming right back to you. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. We're going to see you next week right here on the Healing Train. Bye bye. Love you guys.
Bye-bye.